Hey guys, my name is Loveless, and we are back with Quirk Knife, episode 18 now. We're getting there, slowly moving forward. Okay, so let's get straight into it. Time was passing by too quickly for Izuku's liking. The beach was almost cleaned, with a month to go until Hitoshi's and Mei's separate entrance exams to get into UA, and the three of them were only working harder. Apparently, Star and Shadow finally caught repetition. Thank God. Izuku wasn't sure how he would be able to deal with running into her again. The memory stuck by him, although he never admitted. Speaking of repetition, Hitoshi and Mei were pissed when Izuku showed his face the next day, and not only because of the stitches across his face. Apparently, he had driven Hitoshi mad because the GPS pinging his phone was motionless until dawn, and Izuku didn't answer any of his messages. Hitoshi thought he had gotten murdered. Izuku apologized, yet brushed it off when his friends tried to ask him for an explanation. He simply said his phone must have glitched out, although he did admit to getting wounded in a fight. Izuku didn't mention the other stab wound. Hitoshi was growing stronger. He can finally hold his own with his lilac capture weapon, and he used it as an extension of his body instead of some foreign object. Sure, he wasn't great, not even close to Eraserhead skills, but he gotten trapped once or twice a week, and he can even fling himself from building to building, although he came back with a nasty bruise every time. As promised, Izuku went to collect his dinner every day from the Yamada Aizawa's apartment. He would climb up the fire escape, and the meal will be already there, be waiting at the windowsill for him, the food changing every day. President Mike quickly found his favorite meal was katsudan, and he made it at least once a week. And he also is very good at making the variety of rice bowls and soba. They didn't talk much, mainly because Izuku would scamper away like some sort of wild animal, and he would call out his quiet goodbyes and thanks here and there. His mother did raise him to be polite after all. Izuku had been able to put on a little weight, and he felt as if he had more energy for the night. But don't get him wrong, it still wasn't enough. No matter, because as the professionals say, the show must go on. Izuku slinked down dark streets in his vigilante costume, fidgeting with his new earpiece Mei gave him. She had been going on about Izuku being able to contact the other underground heroes during patrol for quite some time now, but he never was really a fan of having to speak to them. He'd rather keep to himself and do his own thing. Shit, he swore softly as the earpiece squeaked out a bit of feedback, with a large cloud of heat hitting him. His eyes snapping in its direction. Blue was glowing from around the corner of the rundown building, and Izuku moved closer with curiosity, more heat clinging onto his skin, causing his bangs to stick to his forehead. "Don't move so much," a deep voice rang as the blue reflected in Izuku's pupils while he examined the scene in front of him with slight confusion. It was clear to him who was at fault, and he had to step in. The smaller man opened his palms again, and Izuku dashed over, bringing a rod down hard on the man to his right, the bald guy collapsing in on himself. Ash scattering to the ground, and the walls of the building were scorched black. The cause of said damage looking at Izuku with a raised eyebrow like he was the one who did it. "You probably shouldn't turn people into bacon bits," Izuku deadpanned, examining the young man. His hair was black, although Izuku wasn't sure if that was his actual color or if it was just one of a dirty man. Teal eyes pierced his own, and they thinned. "Who the fuck are you?" Izuku ignored the question and tied up Baldy. "You're a new vigilante?" The man's expression quickly turned from annoyance to confusion. "Vigilante?" Izuku laughed. "Don't tell me you go around burning people for fun." No response. "Oh." Izuku fiddled with his pen for a moment and looked back up. So, what does this guy do? The black-haired man shrugged. He was degrading his wife, girlfriend, whatever, in the store down there. I fucking followed him, and sure enough, he was beating her. So, you lit him on fire. Cool. I'll just say I found him like this. Izuku slapped a sticky note onto the man's forehead and dragged him out to the curb like he was a bag of trash. Accurate. Waste of a quirk, you know? Izuku said quietly, crossing his arms over his chest. You could be helping people properly instead of committing arson. The man leaned curiously against the wall and looked down on Izuku. What makes you say that? A fire quirk isn't heroic, if you ask me. Izuku sized up the man and shrugged. If that's how you see it, look at Endeavor. He's got a fire quirk. The man opened his mouth to respond, wearing an angry expression, but Izuku held up a finger. Don't interrupt me. I'm not done. Now, Endeavor may be number 2, but he's still an asshole and a horrible hero. But that doesn't have to do anything with his quirk. He's just naturally a pile of garbage. His quirk, in fact, is probably the one useful thing about the piece of shit. The other man's mouth hung open for several moments. Then he snapped his jaw shut with a smirk. All right, Dabi. Huh? The name's Dabi. Ah, Chaos. Dabi pointed at him. Oh, you're the vigilante everyone's been talking about. Izuku's face paled. Talking about? What do you mean? Yeah, you've been on the news a lot lately. Seems somehow the camera is always cut off or blurred when you pass. People suspect it's your quirk. Izuku rolled his eyes. He didn't want to be known. Also, hacking was just too easy at this point. He had a setting he built into his phone. That's a fucking stupid theory. Agreed. The two were silent for a moment, each examining the other until Dabi spoke up again. Why vigilante? What do you mean? Dabi pinched his bottom lip lightly as he gathered his words and explained slowly. Well, you're still pretty fucking young, no? Clear you got some skill or some shit, too. Could probably be a pro if you wanted to. Go to school, get an education, blah, blah, blah. Izuku couldn't help the chuckle that slipped past his lips, making a show of wiping blood on his hands from his last capture down his thigh, watching the man's expression morph into shock as the red stained his skin. Do I look like a motherfucking hero to you? Dabi stepped back and looked him up and down. Who am I to say? I don't even know what a hero looks like anymore. It was a good point, Izuku had to admit. The line of hero and villain blurred in his eyes months ago, but 2 images did come up to mind. I think the hero like Eraserhead and Present Mike, both are very different people, yet have one goal, to help people. Dabi scoffed. Never heard of this Eraserhead. Either way, I think all the heroes are posing assholes who just want fame. I doubt that. Dabi's eyebrows raised in shock. What? Aren't little kids supposed to, idolize heroes? Izuku stuck his middle finger up. Fuck you, I'm 15. Alright, Mr. 15 years old. What's got you so pent on heroes? At this point, Izuku began walking and was secretly content when Dabi matched his stride, walking slower as to not overtake the shorter boy. You said it yourself. Izuku waved one hand lazily while he used the other to send Tsukachi the location of the villain. What else is there to say? Dabi shoved his hands in his pocket of his torn leather jacket. Yeah, I want to hear your take, you little fuckwad. First off, Izuku paused and pointed a finger in Dabi's face, leaning up onto his tippy toes to reach. You're the fuckwad. A super stinky, smelly fuckwad. Second, if you want my opinion, you could have just asked politely. Izuku continued with confident strides, and Dabi just stood still for a moment, then quickly jogged to catch up. I like you, he said flatly. No one's ever looked at a guy with scars like mine and a quirk that can literally cremate things and call them super stinky, smelly fuckwad. Thanks. Dabi pulled out a cigarette and used the flame on his fingertip to light it. Izuku frowned at him, but not saying anything. So, Dabi exhaled a large breath of smoke. Talk to me. Why are you on the fucking heroes train? Izuku toyed with the dagger between his fingers and used the blade to carefully clean underneath his nails. Huh. Where do I start? Anywhere. Well, shall I start politically or personally? Oh, personally, please. Let me hear the fuckload of trauma. Spoiler alert, I won't be comforting you. I'll probably laugh. Dabi smiled sadistically. The first thing that comes to mind is that my all-time favorite hero straight up told me that I didn't stand a chance of becoming a hero. That's not as heavy as I thought it was going to go to. Don't cut me off, asswipe. Izuku snapped aggressively, even Dabi leaning back slightly. Let me fucking finish, bitch. Dabi's cigarette hung weakly from his lips as his wide eyes slowly returned to their normal size, and he nodded his head. It was the same day as my mom was killed in a villain attack, and my home was destroyed along the way. Is that any better for you? Oh, yes. Right. Nearly died, too. Dabi tilted his head. Oh, you were involved in the attack? No. Dabi's eyebrows pinched together. Then what? His eyes glossed over briefly as he understood, and he looked away, a small frown pulling at the corner of his mouth. Now, to get political, I simply agree with you. The term hero has been lost. You know, it's associated with money and fame, not protecting and putting their lives on the line for others. They're selfish, and it's difficult to pick out the good ones, Izuku explained absent-mindedly. I hate Endeavor. Dabi sneered and suddenly flicked his... Okay, I can do this. I hate Endeavor. Dabi sneered suddenly, flicking his cigarette onto the pavement and aggressively stomping it out with the click of his... I hate Endeavor. Dabi sneered suddenly, flicking his cigarette onto the pavement and aggressively stomping it out. The click of the heel of his boots echoed in the night. Me too, Izuku hummed. He has more casualties than the rest of the top 10 heroes combined. Plus causes a dramatic amount of damage. That's not all, though. Izuku looked at Dabi and thinned his eyes again. Just seeing the white peeking out from the man's overgrown roots seems that his current hair color isn't natural. What else? Dabi mumbled, keeping his head straight forward. I'm quite positive he's an abuser. Dabi tripped over his feet and caught himself before he ate shit on the ground. What? Yeah, I've been analyzing heroes since I was a kid. I know the ins and outs of the top heroes. Endeavor, his personality, is an immediate red flag, you know? Not much has to be said there. Izuku paused when he thought he heard a commotion, but instead a cat ran past. I researched about him and his family just out of curiosity. 4 kids, older one has been declared dead, but that doesn't check out with me. No body, no proof of death, no leads, nothing. I think Toya, I believe his name is. He ran, and for a good reason. Dabi didn't respond, so Izuku continued, sending side-eye glances at the man when he had the chance. He has a powerful fire quirk, meaning Endeavor probably tried to train him. It would explain why Toya ran away. when there's Fumi and Natsua, the woman with spark like Quirk, and Natsu's with ice like his mother Ray. Izuku paused again when Dabi's walk slowed down, something strange growing in the brunette's gut. The brunette had good instincts, he always has. They were certainly through the roof right now. The youngest, Shota. Now get this. He was the last of 4 children, yet his quirk is a perfect balance between hot and cold, ice and fire. Half his father, half his mother. Then no more children. I don't think it's a coincidental the line stopped there. Endeavor was specifically waiting for a powerful quirk like that. What are you saying? Dabi asked quietly. In fact, it was the quietest he's spoken all night. Quirk marriages. That's what happened. And his wife, Ray, was thrown into a mental hospital. It's hard to find info on that, meaning I don't think it was her fault. Izuku hummed. I feel bad for Shoto. His older siblings are old enough to be off at school or moved out, and certainly they wouldn't have fallen victim to Endeavor's evil training since their quirks weren't qualified as up to par. I can't imagine what he goes through, and don't even get me started on Zoya. Izuku chuckled nervously. Sorry, ran off on a bit of a tangent there. I tend to do that. I don't get to talk to many new people besides villains. Dabi continued following the vigilante, and Izuku wasn't one to pass up the opportunity of a new friend. Yeah, I know something about shitty families, Dabi finally whispered, looking down at Izuku. I could understand why, the oldest would run away. What was his name again? Toya. Toya. Dabi repeated slowly, as if the word felt foreign to his tongue. Izuku nodded. I know shitty fathers, so that counts as family, right? Yeah. Fuck yeah. Dads could eat shit. Hell yeah. Izuku looked up to Dabi with curious eyes. But doesn't that make you just as bad as them? Dabi rubbed the back of his neck in irritation. What the fuck are you on about? Dads are heroes. Both. Izuku stated confidently. You're hurting people for your own selfish reasons, almost like you want attention. How does that make you any better than the people we hate the most? Izuku spotted a group of teens harassing an elderly woman and ran off before Dabi could respond, leaving him there with shaky hands. Izuku scolded the teens while waving his knives around, scaring them off with a content smirk. Thank you, the woman cried. Oh, thank you. I just wanted to check my mailbox. No worries, ma'am. You better get back inside. It's not safe out here at this time of night. He waved and jogged off with a thank you, chaos throwing him off guard. He didn't tell her his name. You're right. Izuku punched as hard as he could, adrenaline now flowing through his veins. What the fuck, man? Dabi wheezed as he clasped both hands over his stomach. You're gonna make me puke up my dinner. Why would you sneak up on a guy with a bunch of knives? Dabi clambered up and coughed a few times. Geez, you pack a punch for such a small-sized little fuck munch. Yeah. Dabi placed his hands over his hips and leaned back, cracking his neck with a low exhale. I wanted to answer your question. Izuku nearly missed his words, lost in thought about the new man by the name of Dabi, the scars and the skin grafts that covered his body. Where did they come from? Was his quirk really that powerful? My question? Yeah, and you're right. What I'm doing right now. It's, well, shitty. Izuku finished for his as he enunciated each syllable. I don't want to say it, but what you're doing right now is really fucking shitty. Alright. Like, you're the type of guy I would stab if you gave me a chance. Pardon? What? You said you wanted to stab me. I never did, you liar. Dabi just rolled his eyes and Izuku checked the time on his phone. So, I'm assuming you're telling me this for a reason? It was 4 in the morning, and Izuku was supposed to be back at the warehouse 20 minutes ago. Since it was a Tuesday, he didn't want to make Hitoshi upset. Chaotic mess. Hey Toshi, not dead. Chaotic mess. Just got caught up with a little side quest. Will text you when I'm safe. Don't wait up. Go to sleep. Toshi. What makes you say I'm up? Chaotic mess. Insomniac? Toshi. You said get some sleep for once, please. Chaotic mess. Yeah, you too. Hey, Dabi pulled his eyes away from the screen. I don't want to, be an asshole. Yeah, my mom, Izuku lightly placed his hand on Dabi's elbow when he noticed the way smoke began to form around his hands. It's okay. I don't need a reason. As long as you have one, that's good enough for me. Izuku smiled under the mouthguard, hoping Dabi could tell by the way his eyes wrinkled. Come with me. You look homeless. Dabi squeezed his lip into a thin line. Because I am? Oops. Izuku hummed. Well, we're friends now, so you can come with me. You gotta get your own futon and sleeping bag, though. I have one, and we're totally not sharing. No offense, but you smell like nicotine and beef jerky. Out of pocket, but noted. Izuku gave 2 thumbs up. My patrol is over, so we can go now. You can borrow the blankets I have for tonight. I don't mind. The tiny boy pretty much dragged the stranger back like he was a lost puppy, babbling about God knows what on the way. When the two got back to the warehouse, Izuku barely managed to change into the clothes Eraserhead let him borrow months back before collapsing into his sleeping bag, Dabi curling up on the pile of strange blankets. I'm technically a missing child. Izuku spoke nervously. So don't tell anyone, okay? I don't have any family waiting for me anyways. So, name's Izuku. Dabi was silent for a moment, and Izuku thought maybe he fucked up, but an amused snort came from the nest of blankets. My lips are sealed. Good night, Dabi, Izuku mumbled, while half asleep, missing the small smile Dabi let slip in return. Naosama was close to retiring at the age of 35 at this point. It felt like his brain was slowly decaying and leaking out of his ears. Someone needed to hand him some earplugs to keep it all in. Eraser just left, and Naosama was frustrated at the fact that the pro hero knew how to avoid his quirk. He couldn't squeak anything past him. Eraser always stated his answers carefully, or sometimes straight out ignored his question. To be fair, that man ignores most people. But this time was different because this time Eraser might be getting in the way of the literal law, and that brings a new problem to the light. He has been so adamant about this little vigilante roaming the streets until one day, months ago, he just stopped. Now, that was an immediate red flag. Eraser never gave up on anything, especially when it comes to doing with the well-being of a child. Not to mention Izuku Midoriya, that case that has been completely closed by the police and heroes alike. It's really just Naosama still checking in on the case every so often. But he only had 1 week until he was forced to officially declare the child as presumably dead. That was frustrating when Midoriya and this little vigilante had far too much in common to just be a coincidence. Speaking of chaos, street crime has decreased drastically, and it definitely has to do with something with the news of a child running around with knives and stabbing people. More importantly, very accurate stabbing. Never hitting arteries, never causing internal bleeding, never causing immense pain on pressure points. They were always just enough to inflict some pain in an act of surprise, as if the stabbing was for distraction. The wounds were always decently attended to, as well as for the information on any injuries, helping out both police and the villains. Chaos was an interesting character all night, and he had been attracting more attention lately, clearly by accident. Above ground heroes have begun to complain about him, although it secretly pissed Natsuma off. The heroes didn't care about Chaos doing something illegal or possibly putting himself in danger. No, they cared about Chaos stealing their catches and doing more proficiently without any casualties, government property damage, or disruptions. The heroes, well, they were being selfish, and it was something that Natsuma had never thought about until now. Chaos was beginning to change things, even if the kid didn't know it. Yes, we're done. We're done. It's all over. Yay! Okay, I had to redo this this is like 2 to 3 times I'm having to had to re-record this. Also one of you guys had actually mentioned that I was reading too fast. So I'm trying to slow down. Also, that will make editing a lot easier if I can slow down when reading. So, I hope that it's a lot better than my last videos. I'm trying to get better every video I post. So, yeah, tell me any tips that I need in order to get better. I know that I messed up Tsukachi's name. So bad, I know. But I'm not used to his first name at all. I'm used to his last name. So that's about it. And thank you so much for sticking around this long journey. It's going to be a little bit longer, but it's going to be worth it. And you know what to do if you want to stay sticking around. Bye-bye.